with your belly breathing warm-up today. Belly breathing is very important for basically making sure that you're activating your core properly, and it can have a lot of upstream and downstream effects when we look at how it affects the hips and the shoulders as well. So we're going to start with one hand below the belly button and one hand where your ribs like to lift up from your torso. So from the top hand here, we want to push down into the body so that you feel those ribs slide back into the torso. We essentially want to zip in the front of the torso nice and tight so that we're not in this open scissors position. This is going to help us create a little bit more stability through the torso. Now we're going to add on our belly breaths, and we're going to try to lift the bottom hand up as we inhale. So see Mira's bottom hand lifting up towards the ceiling as she inhales, and then exhaling, let it fall. We're going to keep going through those breaths. Each time it will progressively get a little bit better the more that you focus on it. Another thing that really helps is thinking of expanding your waistband as if you're pressing your belly out into your yoga pants or a belt as you inhale, and exhaling all of the breath out very forcefully, increasing that intensity each time. Watch that as you keep breathing, that you're not feeling the top hand rise up, and you're not feeling the front of the ribs stick up away from the ground. While we're doing this position, we're also trying to think of keeping that spine completely connected with the ground without forcefully pushing down from the lower back. We want the movement from the breath to move horizontally. And as we expand the belly horizontally, that should help you connect with the floor a little bit more to help keep that back flat. So now we're going to take a big breath in, and as we inhale, we're going to push that bottom hand up to the ceiling until you feel a little bit of tension through the lower abdominals. So as we keep this tension here, we're going to exhale without letting it fall. Inhale, keep that tension. If you lost a little bit, don't worry, just light it up again with that big breath in, and exhale, keep that pressure up on that bottom hand without letting anything else move. Once you feel like you've got a good handle on that, sometimes it takes between 5 and 20 breaths. We're going to slowly take one leg up at a time until the knees are up over the hips. Now we're going into our dead bug. So if you feel like you've lost that belly breathing, come back down a step and start over again. From here, we're going to progress it a little bit by taking the arms up over the shoulders. And if you feel comfortable adding a little bit more difficulty, we're going to reach out with the opposite arm and leg. A lot of people, as they start doing this, start to feel the low back lift off of the floor. So if that's the case, just shorten your range of motion a little bit. We can bend the knee a little bit more, or just lower it about halfway to the ground. Perfect. Make sure that your hands aren't swimming all over the place. A lot of people start just flying everywhere with the hands because they get confused. So just move nice and slowly, making sure that you're reaching the opposite leg out with the opposite hand and arm. Once you're done your dead bugs, we're going to turn over onto all fours. From this position here, we're going to start working on your spinal mobility and awareness through the shoulders. So you're going to start with the knees underneath the hips and the hands underneath the shoulders. We're going to work segmentally by trying to control each vertebrae one at a time as we round the low back. So we're kind of thinking of like a dog tucking its tail between its legs as we tilt that low back down, slowly, gradually coming up into the shoulders. You can let the head fall at the top here. And we want to physically push the back up to the sky so that you feel those shoulder blades rolling forward around the rib cage, like you can see in Mira's position. And then we're going to slowly reverse it. Starting with the low back, we're tilting that pelvis back up, kind of like you're trying to shoot your bum up to the ceiling, starting to scoop that low back down, and slowly coming back up to the head, rolling the shoulders back, and imagining that the head is being pulled forward with a string, not taking the head as far back as you can onto that back. And segmentally coming back down again, we're going to go through this one more time, rolling that low back down. Make sure to breathe. Nice, and come back up, arching the back. Awesome. From here, we're going to come back to neutral so that the spine is just flat. Neutral is if you would have like a broomstick or a dowel on the back, it would be in a straight line all the way down to the hips like you can see in Mira's position. And from here, we're just going to do some scapular push-ups. So we're going to squeeze the shoulder blades back and then push the floor apart. We want the shoulder blades to be moving around the rib cage here. Watch that your elbows don't start to bend. That's a really difficult thing to control, but the more you practice it, the better it will get. Just just move nice and slowly. Start with a small range of motion first, and then build it up. We're going to do between 10 and 15 reps here. I always encourage my clients to keep doing more if you're starting to feel the movement improve, until you feel like you've really reached your capacity as far as how much range of motion you can do and with the best control that you can use. Perfect. Yeah, so next up we're going to go into our 90-90 position. So we're going to sit down with the hands just supporting us. We want to watch here that when we're sitting down, we're not letting that low back dump down to the ground. So we're just pushing with the hands to help keep that posture up nice and tall. And we're going to let the knees start flowing like a wave from right to left. We want to watch here that we're keeping the sits bone, or that bony part of your butt, on the ground, on the side that's moving into the midline. So that's internal rotation from the hip. If you do this slow enough and keep that hip glued on the floor, you're going to start to feel a nice deep stretch through the capsule of the hip, which can be really helpful in getting your hips moving properly, adding some lubrication to the joints, and just helping you get a little bit better movement for your workouts. So once you have gone from side to side, you'll feel how difficult it is to hold that position. So we're going to encourage a few deep breaths here just to help your body relax a little bit more. And as you start to breathe in deeply and exhale deeply through the belly, you'll start to feel that knee starting to fall a little bit further to the floor. Just be cautious that you're not pushing the knees down to the floor as hard as you can. So do that again on the other side. Letting the knees slowly fall to the ground. Nice big breaths in. And if this is quite difficult for you, you can just continue to do this a little bit more. For anybody who wants to add a little bit more progression to this warm-up, we're going to start to drop the knees from side to side without the assistance of the hand support. So you can keep your arms crossed up in front. You can hold them straight ahead if that helps you with your balance, or out to the sides. And from here, we're going to let the hips move freely off of the ground as we alternate right to left, letting the knees come down and touch the ground. To add a little bit more progression here, we're going to come back to that first side, and we're going to come into full hip extension by coming up onto the knees and then tilting the pelvis up to get those hips opening up so you feel like you're scooping the belly button up into the back. This one can be a little bit of a challenge, so you can give it a try on your first week, and if you're not quite ready to do that, then just keep trying every time that you do your warm-up and see if it gets a little bit better. Another thing you can do is hold onto a dowel or a frame of a door or a corner of your house, anything that can give you a little support to help you pull yourself up a little bit more, and then gradually ease off of that extra support. From this, if we want to add a little bit more progression through the movement, we're going to take the back leg forward and step all the way through into another angle of a hip opener. So we're feeling that front of the hip flexor open up a little bit more. Push back off of the ground, step the knee back to the back foot, and then slowly come back down to the hips on the ground. Rotate to the other side. Extend the hips up, tilt that pelvis, and then drive that knee forward. Extend the hip, and push off that front leg again. We'll repeat that one more time on each side. If this gets a little bit too confusing for you, don't worry about it. Just keep your 90-90s waving back and forth with or without the hand support. Nice. One more. Perfect. Next up, we're going to warm up the hamstrings, the calves, the wrists, and the shoulders a little bit more through a downward dog variation. So you're going to start with your legs straight, and we're going to try to reach the heels down to the ground. From this position, you can see Mira's head coming back between her arms as she extends out through the shoulders, getting a nice stretch through the heels, through the hamstrings, maybe through the low back and through the shoulders. From this position here, we're going to lift the back leg up and try to extend the hip a little bit more. If we can keep that back heel on the ground, that's great. If you can't, you might need to step your foot back a little bit further if you've got tighter hamstrings. And we're going to drive that knee forward from that back leg and imagine that we're touching the elbow or bringing it in between the shoulders. Bring it back, lift it up, reach it up as high as you can, and come back down. Nice. We're going to do 3 more. also going to feel a little hip hinge as they bring the knee forward. So if that's the case, just move in an angle that feels a little bit easier for you. You can take the knee outside of the arms if you don't get a pinch in that position, or just come about halfway so that you stop yourself before you get a little